Hi, welcome back to Ginger Addiction. I'm so glad you came back to see me today. And today I wanted to talk about something that's kind of been on my mind since I did an episode last week with Tobias Gronville on his channel. We had talked about our top 10 personal favorite albums that were released in 1985. And it was a ton of fun. And if you haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend going over and doing so. It's just sort of a fun blast from the past down memory lane. And it really made me realize how fantastic that particular year was in music. So many good things released, and how totally fortunate I was to be a part of that era and time in music when everything was changing. You know, the 80s brought such sweeping change in how we heard music and thought about music and how we visually saw music with, videos and everything. And it just, really was just quite an inspiring and amazing time. So when I got thinking about that, it, really did sort of make me begin to kind of think about things that influenced me musically through my whole life. I mean, obviously when you're a child, maybe it's who you live with, where you live, what country you live in. There's all kinds of things that are kind of, put out into the world at you when you're little that influence you. I mean, if you're driving in the car with your mom and dad, you don't get to always choose what's on the channel, right? So I started thinking about when I was a kid, and specifically the year I was born, and questioning like, well, what came out the year that I was born, which then led me to looking up what came out the year I graduated high school. So I thought maybe in today's episode, I would do a little comparison, thinking about all those things of songs and albums that came out the year I was born versus music that came out the year I graduated high school. And so I'm sure there's a ton. I have quite a list. I'm going to pick the top 5 I can think of from each time period, just to give a brief overview. Obviously, there's tons on those lists. I would love for everyone who's watching in the comments below to list your favorites from the year you were born, the year you graduated high school. If you haven't graduated high school yet, maybe what's current right now, things that are affecting you and that you love and that influence you in your life today. So that would be just so much fun. I love to know what other people were listening to at a time when I don't think I had tunnel vision. I think I had very broad perspectives in music, but I definitely realized after looking at the lists, there were things that I liked more than others. So to give you a little bit of an idea of what the scope of what you have to think about, in 1970, there were over 4,000 albums that were released that year alone. That is a lot of records, 5,700 singles. So just the songs that were released on the radio that were sold as singles, 5,700. That is crazy. So every decade, every year, I'm sure has equal, if not possibly more music produced. So it's quite a big list to think about. But I really did just try to narrow it down to things that I consciously remember, that I went back to again and again. And even in some cases with the 70s, things I still listen to today. And then I will kind of give my pick of what decade, I guess, or year I preferred. But of course, I will start with the year I was born, which also in 1970, just a little side note, that was also the year that the Beatles broke up. I absolutely had nothing to do with that, I promise you. That was also the year that Bridge Over Troubled Water, I think, had been a number 1 song for Simon and Garfunkel. But I believe Simon and Garfunkel disbanded that year. Later on in 1970, we lose a lot of great musicians, one of which I believe that was the year Jimi Hendrix died, in a significant album that came out that year that if I had my copy with me, which I can't find, I originally had a CD copy I had picked up many, many, many years ago, was Band of Gypsy. So that came out in 1970. I will probably put it over here somewhere so you can see the cover. What a great record. I still love that album. I think it is just, I think he sounds really good. His playing is really good. Everything about that record I really, really love. And it's just sad for me to think that, the Band of Gypsies kind of formed and disbanded all at the same time. And so that is one that I have in my collection somewhere. But I didn't have to show today, so I would definitely mark that as a highlight. But my first one then officially on my list that I will pick is The Man Who Sold the World from David Bowie. So as you know, The Man Who Sold the World came out in 1970. This is a 1972 reissue. The first one, there's 3 covers. The first cover had the cartoon image, I think of a guy with a shotgun or something like that. I've never seen one of those, an original of those in person, but I do believe the UK release of this album with the cover of him kind of laying on a lounge chair in a dress is sort of now considered the official cover for this particular album. So that one is, quite amazing. The Man Who Sold the World is just such a classic song in every regard. I think some folks consider, and correct me if I'm wrong, this might be the album that sort of starts his like rock and roll era. We think of Bowie having so many different eras, like I think his German era might be the one that I prefer the most, but what a great record. My parents listened to Bowie all the time. I remember in first grade, you could bring show and tell records. I brought a David Bowie record for show and tell along with a Led Zeppelin record. So obviously my mom and dad were huge influences, but he was on the radio. It was everywhere. So I don't remember this being released in 1970, but I definitely remember hearing it in my house later on. The next record that I'm going to pick might not seem like a quick choice. Like if someone were to think, oh, she'll pick XYZ, just knowing some of my musical taste and things that I like. This album I picked for many, there's a lot of emotional reasons that I picked this record. And that would be Iron Butterfly's Metamorphosis. So that's the cover. But to me as a kid, this was the cover to that record. And I cannot tell you how much I stared at this album cover. When people talk about albums and art meaning something to them, this would definitely fall in that category if I had to give an example. I do paint and draw today. The colors, the palettes, the things in my everyday life that I like to decorate with and see really all harken back to these colors. I think that color green might be my absolute favorite color in the world. And I thought this album cover was absolutely magical. I don't care what record I was listening to. I would just sit and stare at this album cover. Just a little backstory. I do think the songs I remember off this record the most were Easy Rider, and then one called, is it Stone Believer? And I will look those up and link those. So there's the front cover that I had just shown, the inside gatefold, and of course the back. So there's like 3 different art directors for this. You've got, it's Roger Webster did the photo that I first showed. Bob Jenkins is responsible for the layouts in the center, and Robert Blue did the artwork for the back of the cover. So, but to me, like I always felt that this was the cover of the album. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. And I just can't describe when I see it emotionally how connected I am to this cover. I think it's meant the world to me. And I think it really shaped me artistically, visually for years to come. So I think a direct link. So that's why I picked that one. The next album that I picked was a staple in my house growing up, and listened to all the time. And into my 20s, into today, I'm a huge fan of Santana, and Abraxas was, again, a staple for me. So this came out in 1970, Oyo Como Va, Samba Petit, I think if I'm saying that right or wrong. And then, of course, Black Magic Woman were all on this. And I just love this record. It's got all of those Latin beats and rhythms. The guitar work is beautiful. It's got everything. And I still listen to this album today. And what a thrill to find out that it, was released the year that I was born. And sometimes I know these things, but it doesn't really click. And I guess this time around, I was just purposefully looking at lists from 1970, and you just think, wow, that's crazy. That's really crazy. So the next one, I'm going to pull two for one, and that would be for Funkadelic. So this is the first. This was their first record, and then like 6 months later, they come out with. Whoops, I think I have it upside down. This particular one, Free Your Mind and Your Ass Will Follow. So that was their second release that year. Funkadelic being the very, very first. I am a big Funkadelic fan. It's crazy to think you have this album, which has just wonderful songs on it. It's kind of like a funky jam band, right? They do an 8-minute jam fest with good old music. Qualify and Satisfy is on here. It's very bluesy. Both of these records have that sort of jam band kind of quality to them, with definite blues rhythm and guitars in it. And then, of course, after these two records, then you get Maggot Brain. So, hello. But then this particular record, then you've got, let's see, what were the highlight songs on this one? I Want to Know If It's Good to You. And then the one that I think is really bluesy on here, I left a note. It was Some More, I think is the one I'm thinking of. And that, again, it has that na, 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 very blues kind of sound to it. But what two absolute fantastic records. I could not be more pleased to own them. And Funkadelic and Parliament were literally soundtracks to my childhood, as with many of these other records. I can't imagine not hearing this music. And it definitely influenced me, and it's carried with me my whole life. I love any kind of funky, bluesy soul music. And of course, you can't get much better to me, I think, than Funkadelic. And then I wanted to show you, just to share really quick, another band that I listened to that's super influential, later I would discover, was the MC5. They released back in the USA. We had Stooges. Again, I love the Stooges. I don't have a good copy of Funhouse, but Funhouse came out that year. What a fantastic record. I mean, as a fan of punk music, like, I don't think you can get much better than that initial, like from the Stooges on. So Funhouse was a great one. Elton John's second album came out with Your Song on it that year. James Brown's Sex Machine was out. Led Zeppelin. I'm a huge Led Zeppelin fan. My father played drums. He would play along to Led Zeppelin music when Zeppelin 3 came out in 1970. So again, all these Kraftwerk's debut album, I believe, came out in 1970. So all these records I would hear all of the time growing up, and totally influenced me with styles and rhythm, and definitely introduced me to a lot of British sounds. I would think, with Bowie and Led Zeppelin. Obviously, Kraftwerk is that German industrial that we all love. It's just that kind of krautrock feel, just fantastic music, right? That came out that year, some really, really powerful things. But then I sort of fast forward and think about all of the things that I listened to, and we kind of move all the way up into the year I graduate high school, which is 1989. Man, what a year. Like, again, I think every year, everybody will probably be able to say, like, oh, my year was so great. And I'm sure that's true, but 89 had a ton happening. I mean, you have to think it's right at that moment. Music is starting to shift. We've had new wave, a lot of metal hair bands, and Nirvana was just about ready to take off. Full disclosure, Bleach came out in 1989. I did not have a copy of Bleach to show, but that's, you're kind of tipping the scales that direction. More rap, more hip hop is coming into scene. NWA released their album this particular year. So again, I'm going to run down some records that came out that year that I didn't show on my top 5. But these 5 records were ones that I conscientiously, I guess is the word I'm looking for, remember, going back to time and time again, things that I just really, really loved. So the first one I'm going to start out with, it's no secret that I love Kate Bush. She did Sensual World this year. Sensual World and A Woman's Work were both on this particular record. I think it was just standout, beautiful record. I mean, Hounds of Love may be her hallmark record, but I just think she kind of comes full circle. And I think those two songs alone, I listen to still on heavy rotation over and over again. And when I used to talk to people about Kate Bush, Sensual World was the first thing I would think of, even before Running Up That Hill or any of her others. So my pick, that I could not stop listening to that record. So the other one I'm going to pick next, boy, when I listened to a lot of industrial music, I was really getting into bands like Skinny Puppy, Front 242, Nitzareb, Wax Trax with Ministry, where I lived up north, super close to Chicago. And that influence, I don't know if everybody in the country got to experience Wax Trax through the 80s and that power of music like I did. But if we, growing up in this kind of region of the world, I think we also got exposed to it a lot more. But when Nine Inch Nails and Pretty Hate Machine came out, it just kind of blew my mind. I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. We could not stop playing it. The louder, the better. I mean, it opens up with Head Like a Hole. And I think the first 4 or 5 songs straight through side one are just nonstop amazing. Sanctified on side one is my favorite, I believe, off that one. Kinda I Want To is on side 2. I mean, just almost like every song on this album is super good. It needs to be listened to, I think, start to finish to appreciate them. But those two, Sanctified and Kinda I Want To, are my 2 favorites off of this record. I just couldn't get enough of it. It really, it just rocked my world. I think it changed how I listened to music in a lot of different ways. It was advancing that industrial sound. It was just changing. Something was different. And Trent Reznor just tapped into something, man. It was out of this world. It was crazy good. The next one I absolutely could not imagine not listening to, and I listened to this on cassette more than anything else, which would be 3 Feet High and Rising from De La Soul. I adore this record so much. Magic Number, Jennifer Taught Me, Little Bit of Soap. Oh my God, that song is fantastic. Let's see, Potholes in My Lawn, of course, Me, Myself, and I, Daisy Age. I mean, what else could you think of? I mean, really almost every album, I think every song on this album, the little snippets in between where they do the talk shows, and they're just funny. They have a great sense of humor. The music is good. The beats are good. They have something important to say. So it was kind of a revelation, just fresh and different. And I think it's just stand out. Like I can't imagine not having this record in my life. And I know when my kids were showing interest in this style of music, this was like one of the first things I'm like, you have to listen to this. Like just start from the beginning. Right. And this is like a staple, absolute staple. The next one is sort of a no-brainer. In 1989, it was a very controversial time for Madonna and Like a Prayer. I think Pepsi dropped her after Like a Prayer came out, despite the fact Like a Prayer, I believe, was the number 1 song or one of the top singles of that year. But because of her use of Catholicism and imagery, Pepsi was like, nope, we're not going there. I mean, can you imagine? I can't even imagine today the things that people do and say, the companies that grasp onto stuff that is way more controversial and way more risky than anything I think Madonna did in that time. But at the time, it was. But she released Like a Prayer, Express Yourself, Cherish, Keep It Together. And I always liked Oh Father. And I mean, what a great record. That was just, I don't know. I can't imagine. And when Deadpool came out and everybody went crazy, like it was all brand new. I mean, shiny and new, as she would say. And then my 5th record is not a record, but it is my original copy of my CD of The Cure's Disintegration. Again, another absolutely pivotal, important record, soundtrack to my senior year of high school. Of course, you've got Disintegration. There's Love Song. Lullaby is on here. I mean, Fascination Street, which I really do love. I think Love Song, Fascination Street, 2 of my absolute favorites. I can't say enough. If you can commiserate part of the reason I liked albums so much better. How many jewel cases did we all break? Like, you just know it's going to happen because you listen to it so much. You take it in your car. Oh my gosh, look at that. And it's just, it's disintegrating. Okay, no pun intended. I'm sorry. But anyway, so absolutely fantastic. I just cannot say enough good things about The Cure. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. And I did really, really love that particular record. So just to give you an idea of a few of the other things that were released in 1989, I had a heck of a time making some decisions, but B-52s released Cosmic Thing. Rush was with Presto, great tour that year. Grace Jones, Bulletproof Heart. I love Grace Jones. New Order's Technique was out. Elvis Costello released Spike. Soul to Soul. If you have not listened to Soul to Soul, maybe you're somebody who's not familiar. That album is so good. Sonic Temple from The Cult. Nirvana's Bleach. Prince released the Batman soundtrack that year, which I should have had. I listened to that all the time. I listened to Paul's Boutique from the Beastie Boys all the time. Title album, Love and Rockets all the time. Peter Murphy had released Deep that year. David Bowie came out with Sound and Vision. I could go on and on. It was a really amazing year to be a music lover. Primus was out. Of course, we had Nine Inch Nails, Jesus and Mary Chain, Debbie Harry, Lenny Kravitz. Sugar Cubes was another band I listened to an awful lot, and I was really starting to get into White Zombie. They had an album released that year. So 1989, obviously near and dear to my heart. And when I have to think about comparing 1970 to 1989, I'm sure many of these albums would never have been. Nirvana does covers of Bowie music, for goodness sakes. Like, a lot of this stuff would never have happened without the music, obviously, that came before it. And I discovered that music through my family, through the radio, through the Times in 1970s on up. But I think 1989 win out for me, in part, not because I don't listen to the music from the 70s. I mentioned that I do, but there's so much about 1989. And that was a time in the 80s that I discovered music for myself. I purposefully went out and looked for things new, different, that just kind of spoke to me. So I think to think about music in that term, I kind of came into my own and sort of musically blossomed into a person that I am today. It shaped me, and I will always remember. So I'm a total child of the 80s. 1989 has to win out hands down, but I have a deep, deep love and appreciation for the music that came out the year that I was born. So perhaps you guys have some of these similar songs on your list. Maybe you were born in 1970 and graduated in 1989 like I did. Would love to hear everything that you can think about that were your favorites the year you were born, or the year that you graduated high school, or anything else that's in between that's important to you. So fun to hear what other people were listening to and those memories. A lot of you shared some really great musical memories with me through other episodes and in the comments. And it's just so cool to hear everybody else's experience and how music shapes us and brings us together. And I think you'll always remember those things when you hear those songs. I know I will. So on that note, I hope that you're spinning some great tunes, that you'll come back to see me and hit like and subscribe, and possibly coming up with your own little time capsule of favorites. Everything that I list today. Also, by the way, I'm going to try to put up on my Spotify playlist. I'm going to link that in the description. It's also in the description in my channel description. So again, songs that I mentioned today, I'm trying to cultivate that list so that I don't get in trouble with YouTube for playing songs that I shouldn't, but also giving you all a chance maybe to hear something different. So again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you all very soon.